As I mentioned, not a lot of information coming out of Mozambique, which is very worrying. Jasmine Opperman, Africa analyst, joining me now, because Mozambique, not far from where we are at the moment, Cabo Delgado, a few hundred kilometers away, and there's just no information coming out. What we do have is that there's a major attack on the go at the moment. Good morning, Jasmine. What can you tell us?
Morning, Gad, and morning to your viewers. Quickly, not to take too much time, I think there is one thing I want to make clear. This is not a surprise attack. There have been early warnings that Palma is going to be targeted for 3 days. The information was liaised with foreign embassies, with the Mozambican government. They ignored the warnings. This attack, and keep in mind, Gareth, if I can interrupt myself, we're not only talking expats. There are 60,000 plus locals in Palma that had to flee at all cost. So it's massive implications we are talking about. But the fact that no action was taken, international community, this region, by the Mozambican government, all three have to account for these lives lost. Major infrastructure destruction in Palma. People were beheaded. Insurgents walked into their houses and beheaded the civilians still present. They started executing arson. The hotel, Amarula Hotel, I don't know how much of the hotel was destroyed, but again, arson. And quite frankly, the insurgents have succeeded, as in Mozambique prior, to occupy Palma.
Why has there been such little action? Because you're absolutely correct, Jasmine. This has been on the radar for SADC, the South African government. The US State Department is aware of the concerns happening in this region. Why has nothing been done? Because people are now drawing comparisons between what's happening in Cabo Delgado to what we saw in Syria a couple of years ago with ISIL and those insurgents. And this is not to be taken lightly. We cannot over-dramatize how serious this actually is.
It is serious. I think what the region needs to understand, that Cabo Delgado, the violence, the conflict theater, yes, within a geographical area, but it contains regional implications and regional threats that needs intervention. Sadly, we are sitting with representatives at SADC. We're sitting with a dinosaur organization that looks after certain parties' interests. We sit with a structure that do not have the capacity, neither financial means, to immediately step in. We will have to rely on the EU or the UN to support such actions. And then, even then, you will need a transition period. From the international community, the same thing. Maputo is delaying any type of intervention beyond training. And these delays makes it extremely difficult for any intervention to take place. And it raises questions on why the Mozambican government is so reluctant if a $26 billion project is at stake to the benefit of the region. And the region and or regional leaders must understand that the current position of the Mozambican government is constituting a risk to the region and not only Cabo Delgado.
Jasmine, before I say goodbye to you in the last minute or two I have with you, stop me if I'm assuming too much here. Please do. How much of a threat is South Africa in when it comes to this? As mentioned, Mozambique, not far from us. We share a border with that country. This is in the north of that country. It doesn't take too much imagination to think that we could have a problem on our own doorstep aimed at South Africa if this isn't brought under control.
South Africa must realize that although we will not have a similar situation as in Cabo Delgado, there will be sympathies, there will be an overspill in terms of people movement. South Africa must realize that border security is not the solution. South Africa must realize that the US rushed designation of claiming this as an Islamic State-led insurgency has awakened fuel, not only in Mozambique, but also in South Africa. And with that, Islamic sympathizers in South Africa will start associating themselves with Cabo Delgado in any position by our government which they do not like could lead to an act of violence by a self-radicalized individual. And with that, people being killed. We cannot isolate ourselves from what's happening.
One cannot help but wonder, Jasmine, as well, if the SANDF, and there have been many calls now for the SANDF to get involved, could you imagine a situation where a move by SANDF could turn into a violent situation if our military and our defense force tries to take on the terrorists in this case, and could that put a target on South Africa?
It will definitely, from the Islamic State as an international terror organization, because I go back to the designation, which was rushed. I think it was totally unnecessary. It has given them a status. If we are going to get involved, they are special forces. We need to understand it's a sustained intervention, 2 to 3 years. We need to understand we have limited capacity and capability. We need to understand we are going to be associated with security forces that have killed civilians by the hundreds. And that in itself could also lead to people within South Africa not being happy and satisfied. But the major risk, if we get directly involved, will be opening up a door to the Islamic State. And Gareth, I'm sorry to say, our intelligence services are simply not in a position to even manage, control, and do surveillance on sympathizers we know of. What about those we don't know of? We must face reality in terms of providing security here before we move in there.
I appreciate your time in speaking to us. Always a pleasure. Jasmine Opperman, Africa analyst, joining us here on eNCA about the situation over in Mozambique. As I mentioned earlier, very little information coming out. We are trying to piece together credible information as we're getting it out of our northern neighbor.